Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Ailey, you wrote an incredible piece for The Bulwark. Why is Mitch McConnell afraid of this man, referring to Lev Parnas? We know he's associated or connected to Rudy Giuliani and the president, but Mitch McConnell? Kevin McCarthy? Help us understand.
Well, Mitch McConnell doesn't have any connections to Lev Parnas, but Mitch McConnell is trying to put on a trial over articles of impeachment he hopes to dispense with quickly, to have a unified Republican vote, and to acquit the president. The longer this process takes, the more of a chance that we learn more revelations in this, ready for it, second state and federal criminal investigation that is Russia-related and circles back to President Trump and his associates. We know the SDNY and the FBI are looking into Rudy Giuliani's involvement with these men. He received $500,000 from Lev Parnas, who court filings say last week has limitless funds, resources, foreign funds, has taken $1 million from Russians. And if you connect the dots back, this goes straight to the free election meddling work that Giuliani is doing for President Trump. This is what Mitch McConnell does not want us to be talking about.
So one more time. President Trump might not be paying Rudy Giuliani, but Rudy, he's getting paid.
With Russian money. To meddle in the 2020 election, we all have been told by the experts, Stephanie, that the Ukraine collusion theory is a Kremlin disinformation operation that is now being serviced by the likes of Senator John Kennedy and these other willing Republicans to talk about this. But this spreads, if you look at the investigation, who is being contacted or subpoenaed into Ballard Partners in Florida, one of the most influential donors and lobbying groups, not only in Florida politics or the epicenter of Trump's electoral strategy, but really important people in the Republican Party in Florida keep Trump donors. The pro-Trump super PAC, Devin Nunes, has been working with Lev Parnas since 2018. Former Republican Congressman Pete Sessions has been testified before a grand jury about taking money from Lev Parnas and then writing a letter critical of Ukrainian Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to try to help get her fired, the bidding of Rudy Giuliani, which he takes credit for as recently as last night. If Pete Sessions, the former congressman, has been testified before a grand jury, why has Congressman Nunes not also been contacted by the authorities? He likely has. So this spreads all around Trump world. But most significantly, you have to follow the money, and this is the revelation from last week, that Republicans don't want to become part of this trial. They don't want more revelations here because Russian money is funding Lev Parnas, who's been paying Rudy Giuliani to do the work at the direction of Donald Trump, the president. And Parnas, his lawyer says, will testify that he did everything at the direction and for Trump.
If all of these dots get connected, then what you're laying out is worse than the president and his aides seeking help to get dirt on the Bidens from the Ukraine. So if these dots are connected, it would be devastating. It would impact the 2020 election.
It's extremely problematic if for McConnell to rush to an acquittal if he wants to protect his Senate majority, if this were to blow up later on in the year. They rushed to an acquittal in January, early February. This blows up in some horrible way later on in the year and threatens all 6 or 7 Republicans up for re-election and threatens his majority. That's something McConnell is calculating. But I add in the piece that it's clear from the intimidating comments from the Attorney General this week, who has the power to stop any indictment.
Okay, this is what I want you to dig into,
right.
Because Bill Barr, Mitch McConnell, what ability will they have to influence what's happening in the Southern District of New York?
Well, Mitch McConnell can. He's a Senate Majority Leader, but he might be hopeful that the comments from the president intimidating FBI Director Chris Wray on Twitter last week, as well as the comments from the Attorney General Bill Barr, will so chill the work of agents who might be looking into a second extraordinary, unprecedented Russia-focused criminal probe into what was once a presidential candidate and now a president. Bill Barr has essentially said, the FBI is so broken, we can't do this again.
Chill them, or will it inspire them to double down?
Well, in my piece, I have quotes from Jeffrey Berman, the U.S. attorney, when he announced the indictments of Parnas and Fruman. He basically said, campaign finance law violations are no small thing. This is the corruption with foreign money of our political process, and voters deserve to know where everything is coming from. They deserve a fair process. They've been emphatic about their independence and their commitment to the rule of law, but just remember, Bill Barr does have the power to stop any indictment. And so lots of questions are circulating about whether or not Rudy Giuliani will ever be indicted, or will just be sort of this cloud over him as he runs around to do interviews on Fox News.
It is Wednesday, the 18th of December of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of this meddlesome priest? Yes, it is impeachment day. The articles of impeachment are being debated as we speak. The Republicans tried to get a much longer debate period in hopes that they could have a vote in the dead of night, like they tried to when it came out of committee, and Nadler said, too bad, we'll take the vote in the light of day. Thank you very much. And he did. So the Republicans really pushed to try to extend this debate period so that the vote will come much later. But that was nipped in the bud, so to speak. Debate period will only be for 6 hours. Now, of course, that might change somewhat. What else? Oh, well, Trump went on a rage tweet. Oh, well, it wasn't a rage tweet. It was an official letter from the White House, probably composed by Stephen Miller and a few others, in which they, well, when I say composed, put together, because it sure sounds like a lot of tweets that Trump has been making over these many years. Raging, actually, and no lawyer in the White House put their name on it, or at least as far as I know, because that was not a legal document. It certainly was a rage letter about, your date breaking up with you. And he doesn't like it. I think he's finally understanding a little bit about what it means. Maybe he doesn't, but I think he can tell viscerally that, this is maybe something wrong. Maybe I don't want to have impeachment attached to my name in history. These people don't care about history, so they say. We also have Rudy Giuliani continuing the crimes for Trump. We find out that Lev Parnas has been passing money from Firtash on to Rudy. Now, let's remember, Firtash is under indictment. We're trying to extradite that mofo, and he's been fighting it every inch of the way to the point of basically, messing up our whole democracy just because he doesn't want to face the law. That says something when someone has that much money, and you hardly even know him, do you? You hardly know who Dmitry Firtash is. And yet he has enough money and power that he can muck up our democracy. See, it's not just Vlad, okay? Yeah, Vlad, we could say, is the puppet master and all that. But, this is autonomous individuals who have a particular goal in mind in which all the rest of these particular individuals share. You could almost call Dmitry Firtash a lone wolf. And there's a lot of lone wolves out there, and they all seem to be working in consort with each other, don't they? Yes, they do. So here is Firtash giving money to Lev Parnas. And I'm still a little curious on how Lev Parnas wasn't thrown in jail when he didn't disclose this loan from Firtash. Loan? The mob doesn't loan money. Well, they do. But they exact a much higher rate of interest than what we normal civilians would suffer. So this supposed loan was not enough to throw Parnas into jail for not disclosing the fact that he got that money laundered through his wife. Well, with the revelation about Parnas being a pass-through, and with Mitch McConnell, Moscow Mitch, because we also have Deripaska involved here too. And we have a story about Mitch's wife. And she has the China connection. Could we be fighting a war on multiple fronts? Yes, we are. And you know what else is another front in this war? The denial by a vast majority of the American people that we are indeed under attack. And they will not just be quiet about it, they're going to mock you. Like you're making all this up. Even though Rick Gates just got sentenced to 45 days in jail. Weekends. But his evidence, his testimony, his helping out the FBI, and I got to say the CIA too, because this is a counter-intel investigation as well. What Rick Gates had been able to provide put a lot of other people in jail too, didn't it? And except for the fact that we have an OLC memo that apparently is more powerful than the Constitution of the United States, this guy who sits in the Oval Office apparently cannot be held to account. In fact, this impeachment is worse than the Salem witch trials. He's being treated worse than the witches in the Salem witch trial. Well, you know what? Let's throw him in the middle of one of the Great Lakes. And if he sinks, he's not a witch. And if he floats, well, he might be a witch. Let's see how he thinks about it then. We're not treating you worse, and we're not even treating you the same. Impeachment is not a coup. It is an American constitutional guarantee. And by dint of the fact that this guy thinks that impeachment is a coup means that he is not, well, let's just put it this way. He's really ignorant about the United States of America. And so is his vast amount of minions. You know, the Daily Show went out and asked a bunch of Trump MAGA hat wearers, did you read the transcript? Because Trump always says, read the transcript, read the transcript. It's not a transcript, it's a summary in which they edited out, the really damaging parts. But they're so stupid, they let some other damaging parts pass through. That's how stupid they are. Because they don't think they're doing anything wrong, and so they would know in some instances, well, we better keep that one out. So Trump has admitted, even in this summary of committing crimes, and the Daily Show went out and asked a bunch of MAGA hat Colt 45ers, have you read the transcript? And they sheepishly admitted no, while telling everybody don't be sheep. We're all sheep because we read the transcript. And yet, these MAGA hat wearers are, as one said, I put my trust in Donald Trump. Yeah, well, let me tell you, a few people have in the past. Actually, several thousand are sharing $25 million right now for being frauded by Donald Trump for putting their trust in Donald Trump. I don't want to say I told you so, but I am. And we have been. Probably since before your grandma was calling Eisenhower a commie. I told you so. What's on the rest of the menu here? The Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, there's a reason GOP leadership is so afraid of Lev Parnas. And just follow the laundered Russian rubles. Just follow them. On the rest of the menu, Elaine Chao is under scrutiny for a $67 million contract to her husband's home state. Yeah, it's a web of corruption, a web. An anti-gay Texas judge sued the state for telling her she must do her job. And Congress is restricting Trump's ability to pull the U.S. out of NATO. Well, let's hope so. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the European Rights Watch Group said Greece needs to do more to counter bribery. And veteran climbers are skeptical that Nepal's new rules for Everest will address the root causes of the heavy death toll on the world's tallest peak. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, deftly located by superior graphic design. Thank you, Tom. And it is, located right there by the social media scroll. And, of course, you do know that Kelly Lincoln monitors the chat room, so do engage. And now, if you would just take a gander to the leftish of the page from our chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page. And do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Your recurring contribution helps us pay our bills, and we need to get some newish machinery and all the attendant software and all the other accoutrements one needs to resist in today's modern a-go-go society. In fact, your generosity over these many 8 years allowed us to, get some newish machinery about halfway through this 8-year-plus stint of continuous 24/7, 365 resistance radio. And thank you for your generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. Just go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that, and thank you, Tom. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at Justice Putnam. And I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime for your social media linkage pleasure. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And most importantly, pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us. We're all there. The good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, let's tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Oh, do not presume that this is just a reference to anything eliminationist. It is not. It is simply a lovely egg dish with a velvety hollandaise sauce. Brunch-like, too. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe is out of the American Independent by Josh Israel. The Government Accountability Office, affectionately known as the GAO, they have an examination that has raised serious concerns about the process by which Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao determined project grant recipients, finding that it did not treat all applicants with the assurance of fairness. One of the beneficiaries of that process was Boone County, Kentucky, a jurisdiction represented by Chao's husband, Senate Majority Leader Moscow Mitch McConnell. Well, Kent and Elaine, You know who her family is? She's not only the wife of Moscow Mitch, she's also the family of a grand Chinese business scion family. They only own the largest shipping concern in the whole world. The whole world. So, of course, she's going to be transportation secretary. Who else would know how to, pass out the bribe money? Who else? Politico reported yesterday, Tuesday, that a $67.5 million grant for Boone was initially flagged by professional staff as incomplete. After the Department of Transportation gave Boone and a minority of the other incomplete applicants a second chance to fix their submission, Chao selected it as among the 26 grant winners from the initial pool of 258 applicants. And the discretionary grant was Kentucky's largest from the department. How convenient. Given that Chao's husband, Moscow Mitch, faces a potentially tough 2020 re-election race, the Boone grant could be seen as especially problematic. The arrangement raised ethical red flags because McConnell has touted his ability to deliver federal grants to his home state as a frequent refrain in his re-election campaign. And as the leader of the Senate, he has significant control over the oversight of his wife's department. An unusual concentration of power in one couple. Well, you got Moscow and you got, Canton, Shanghai, Beijing. After some of the grant applicants complained about the lack of clear standards, the GAO began a review last year. Its report documented recurrent and long-standing concerns about how grant recipients are chosen and the department's lack of a paper trail for its decision-making process. Lack of a paper trail in government? I wonder why that is. Emails obtained by Politico also show that Boone County officials had communicated with Chao's current chief of staff and former McConnell campaign staffer Todd Inman, who has been known to offer extra guidance to Kentuckians with business before the secretary. Oh, you mean you got to pay him to see her? The mind reels. Peter DeFazio, representative and chair of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, requested an inspector general's investigation in October, following earlier Politico reports that Chao's department provided special treatment for Kentucky and that Inman gave extra assurance to McConnell's allies and constituents. A spokesperson said in an email from the Department of Transportation that staff had reached out to those projects with incomplete grant applications that were best aligned with the required criteria. They claimed Politico's reporting contained multiple inaccuracies. The Boone County project was a high-performing application that met and exceeded both the merit and statutory criteria involved, they wrote. Still, the spokesperson said DOT is committed to working to implement GAO's recommendations and is always looking for areas to improve the grant-making process. Chao previously came under fire in May for a broken pledge to sell off construction material stocks worth between $250,000 and $500,000. She sold off her shares in June, according to the New York Times, stating in a letter to the Transportation Department lawyers that she had made an inadvertent misstatement about the holdings when she was first nominated. Inadvertent? You mean a convenient inadvertent misstatement? Next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes our way out of the American Independent and also again by Josh Israel. A Texas judge who was warned not to discriminate against same-sex couples has filed a lawsuit against the state, claiming the warning had cast doubt on her capacity to act impartially. Really now. Justice of the Peace Diane Hensley of Waco, Texas, is effectively demanding the right to ignore the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling on marriage equality, as well as demanding $10,000 in damages. Yeah, you don't have to actually have a law degree in Texas to be a judge. Because they don't call them judges. They call them Justice of the Peace. In fact, that's all Louis Gohmert was, a Justice of the Peace. According to the Waco Tribune-Herald, Hensley filed a class action lawsuit in state court on Tuesday. She claimed the letter of warning violated her religious liberty under the Texas Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which mandates that government agencies not substantially burden a person's free exercise of religion. Oh, her free exercise of religion is arbitrarily condemning people to the rack because it's her religious understanding about how justice should be meted out. Hensley specifically claimed the commission had cast doubt on her capacity to act impartially to persons appearing before her as a judge due to the person's sexual orientation. In addition to the $10,000 in damages, Hensley is also demanding a declaratory judgment that the commission violated her rights, as well as a class action guarantee that all other justices of the peace who are bigots will be allowed to discriminate against same-sex couples in the same way because of their highly held religious beliefs. Texas does not require justice of the peace to officiate marriages, but since the 2015 Obergefell case guarantees same-sex couples to marry, the state has left it up to them to whether to marry all couples or none, them being the justice of the peace. Hensley decided her religious beliefs entitled her to ignore this rule and that she would perform marriages only for opposite-sex couples. Since 2016, she and her staff have given same-sex couples wishing to be married a piece of paper that said, "I'm sorry, but Judge Henley has a sincerely held religious belief as a Christian and will not be able to perform any same-sex marriages because you're evil." I added the evil, but you know that's what she thinks. Hensley says they refer same-sex couples to other officiants who do not have the same objection. Well, last month, the Texas State Commission on Judicial Conduct issued a public warning reminding Hensley that the Texas Code requires judges to act impartially. This amounted to a slap on the wrist and came after two commissioners who supported a stronger punishment were removed by Governor Greg Abbott. Offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, comes our way by anonymous worker bees out of the Associated Press. Congress is poised to ratchet up pressure on Syria, Russia, and China, while making it more difficult for the Trump administration to reduce commitments to allies from Europe to Asia. As part of a defense policy, lawmakers are set to impose sanctions on Syrian troops responsible for atrocities committed during Syria's civil war and to fund war crimes investigations and prosecutions. The bill, well, of course, that just means Trump will have to pardon the war criminals. It's the American way now. The bill will also register strong congressional concern about Russia and China buying the United States to supporting Ukraine militarily and bar the Trump administration from any move to recognize Russia's annexation of Crimea. In addition, it will restrict Trump's ability to extract the U.S. from NATO or draw down its troop presence in South Korea. Contained in the National Defense Authorization Act is the entire text of the so-called Syria Civilian Protection Act, which is named for the former Assad government official who took thousands of photographs of victims of torture and other abuses and smuggled them out of the country. The Caesar bill applies sanctions to those who lend support to the Assad regime's military efforts in the Syrian civil war and grants authorities to the Secretary of State to support entities collecting evidence and pursuing prosecutions against those who have committed war crimes in Syria, the House Armed Services Committee said. Obviously, it's partisan. We believe in human rights and restricting people's ability to ever commit atrocities again. And the Republicans say, no, you liberal commie. How dare you fight for human rights? There's no money in it. To counter Russian aggression in Europe, lawmakers will boost funding for the European Defense Initiative by $734 million that will pay for military construction on the continent and provide funding for anti-submarine warfare. They will also renew and extend $300 million in security assistance, including lethal weaponry like cruise and anti-ship missiles for Ukraine. Well, that's a lot more than those Stinger missiles that are anti-tank. The bill will also impose sanctions on companies and governments working on the controversial Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline that will link Russia and Germany. U.S. officials believe the pipeline will increase Europe's reliance on Russian energy. The act seeks to deter Trump from walking away from the NATO alliance, something his critics fear is his intention. Fear? We know it is. And that's by barring the use of funds to terminate, suspend, or file notice of withdrawal for the United States from NATO. And it will prohibit the Pentagon from reducing the number of U.S. troops in South Korea below 28,500 without a determination from the Defense Secretary that a withdrawal is in the national security interest. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world, and we are going to finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, The Calm and Winding Road. Slight spoilers. In Queen and Slim, Daniel Kaluuya and Jodie Turner-Smith play Ernest Hines and Angela Johnson, a poorly matched couple who are out on a last-minute first date when they are stopped, bullied, and attacked by a cop. They're black, he's white, and accidentally while defending themselves, they shoot the cop and then flee, setting us up for a road romance crime film a la True Romance, or Natural Born Killers, or even Thelma and Louise. But that's not what we get. What we get instead is less of a chase and more of an odyssey, as the film languidly follows our duo through various episodes along their drive to freedom. And the episodes are dramatic and emotional, but they don't really build to much. At one point, Ernest says he doesn't drink, and then later on, he does. And it feels like that action is something. But thinking about it, we never learn why he doesn't drink, or what sobriety means to him, so we don't know how to feel when he casually throws it away. And a lot of the movie is like that, compelling actions and interactions that don't lead to an examination of the central theme or the development of a character. I mean, I'd like to say that this movie is more a character study than a plot beast, and don't get me wrong, Kaluuya and Turner-Smith are captivating to watch. Those introspective scenes with spare dialogue, they're right there. But though we get character backgrounds and beliefs, none of their core desires or tenets of personal philosophy are challenged. Hines and Johnson don't learn anything or overcome anything. They aren't appreciably different at the end of the film than at the beginning, other than that they've hooked up. He doesn't drink, he takes a drink. I mean, go see it. It's very watchable, but know what you're getting into. Queen and Slim isn't a movie that you follow. It's a movie that you sit with and let happen. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser, filling in for your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. As the U.S. population ages, more people are at risk for injuries. The largest percentage of injury-related deaths among this group are caused by falls. Elizabeth Burns is with CDC's National Center for Injury Prevention and Control. She's joining us today to discuss ways to prevent injuries and deaths from falls among senior adults. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Thanks for having me.
Elizabeth, what are some of the more common consequences when a senior adult falls?
Well, first, it's important to note that falls are incredibly common. More than 1 in 4 older adults will fall in a given year. Common consequences include loss of independence and an increased fear of falling, as older adults are afraid to do the same kinds of activities they were doing before. And this can actually lead to more falls, as older adults have less strength in their lower body. Common consequences include hip fracture and traumatic brain injury. And ultimately, in 2016, almost 30,000 older adults died because of a fall.
So are falls more common in men or in women?
Falls are more common in women, and more women go to the emergency department because of a fall, and more women die because of a fall. However, the rate of fall deaths are more common in men than women. What this means is that out of 100,000 men, more will die from a fall than out of 100,000 women.
What are common causes of falls among older people?
Getting on and off the toilet and getting in and out of bed are common causes of falls. Walking around the hallways at night when the lights are off is a common way people fall. There's also an increased amount of medications used in seniors, which have side effects like making them lightheaded, and that increases the risk of falls and is a common cause.
With all of those factors, what are some ways our listeners can decrease their chances of falling?
Older adults should talk to their healthcare provider or doctor about how they can decrease their chances of falling. This can be done during the annual wellness visit or during annual physicals. The doctor will recommend an exercise program that should increase strength and balance, or maybe refer you to a physical therapist. Additionally, they can look through your medications and perhaps reduce your doses or suggest medications that decrease your chances of falls.
Are there things we can do to modify our homes to prevent falling?
Oh, absolutely. Installing grab bars on the side of the toilet, making sure that rugs are taped down or removed, making sure that there's lighting in the hallways are all really simple ways that an older adult can modify their home to prevent falls.
Where can listeners go to get more information about preventing falls?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/steady, and that's spelled STEADI.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I've been talking today with Elizabeth Burns about ways to prevent fall-related injuries and deaths among senior adults. Improving strength and agility through regular exercise and removing potential obstacles in the home can help decrease the risk for falls. If you or a loved one is older and struggle with mobility, talk with a healthcare provider about ways to decrease the risks for fall-related injuries and death. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Jeffrey Nemhauser for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
What does the Constitution say should happen, must happen, after the House of Representatives impeaches a president? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Article 1 of the Constitution, which sets forth the powers of the Congress, says the Senate shall have the sole power to try impeachments, and, when sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. The oath that each senator must take in the impeachment trial of a president comes from the Senate's rules on impeachment and says this: I solemnly swear or affirm, in all things appertaining to the trial of, insert name, now pending, I will do impartial justice according to the Constitution and the laws, so help me God. To do impartial justice, that's the requirement for each senator sitting as a trial juror, which means that each senator has the obligation to evaluate the evidence impartially and objectively and not politically, and to decide whether the president has committed a high crime or misdemeanor. High crime or misdemeanor being a term of art that means, in Hamilton's words, an abuse or violation of the public trust. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1991. That was the day that thousands of workers at the U.S. General Motors factory got some very bad news. The company's CEO, Robert Stample, announced that GM would eliminate 74,000 jobs and close 21 plants. The company was struggling. In 1987, they had launched a new advertising campaign. Dubbed the Heartbeat of America, the campaign hoped to revitalize consumer interest in GM. But the ads were not enough to reverse the company's slide in the marketplace. From 1980 to 1991, General Motors' share of the U.S. auto sales had fallen from 46% to 35%. The joke became that instead of the heartbeat of America, GM was the heartbreak of America. One of the plants to close was the Willow Run factory outside of Detroit. This was an iconic U.S. factory. It had been constructed during World War II to build airplane bombers. It was the largest plant in the entire world at the time. One worker in the plant, Rose Will Monroe, became known as Rosie the Riveter. GM purchased the plant in 1953. 7 million Chevrolets rolled off the plant's assembly line. When this plant closed, for many, it signaled the end of an era in U.S. manufacturing. The United Auto Workers Union leadership considered the massive layoffs as GM responding to Wall Street rather than its workers. In an interview with the New York Times, UAW President Owen Beaver declared the proper answer to the insatiable demands of the Ebenezer Scrooge types who run Wall Street is not a snappy yes sir salute. But many GM workers went into that holiday season with an uncertain future on the horizon.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Impeach the president. Impeach the president. Impeach the president.
One day shy of 21 years after the House of Representatives under Newt Gingrich impeached Bill Clinton, Nancy Pelosi's House will vote to impeach Donald Trump. There's little mystery about the outcome. We know with certainty how practically every lawmaker will vote, except for Wisconsin Congressman Ron Kind, who apparently never lets on his intention prior to a vote. Minnesota Congressman Colin Peterson has signaled he'll vote no. New Jersey Congressman Jeff Van Drew, who is expected to officially become a Republican, says he'll vote no, and Jared Golden of Maine announced he'll split his vote. Yes on abuse of power, but no on obstruction of Congress? Way to stand up for something, Mr. Golden. Or not. After a long Tuesday of discussion and debate, the House Rules Committee voted along party lines to approve 6 hours of debate on the House floor Wednesday. Democrats and Republicans will have 3 hours each to make their case ahead of the votes. The final vote will likely not happen until well after 6 p.m. Eastern Time, depending on how much the Republicans try to delay and stall the inevitable. Donald Trump responded to the enormity of the situation by releasing a letter, a scathing 6-page screed he wrote to Nancy Pelosi, reportedly with lots of help from staffers, including Stephen Miller. When asked if she had seen it Tuesday afternoon, Pelosi's response clearly summed it up.
Your reaction to the president's letter?
No reaction. It's ridiculous.
You have no reaction? Why not?
No, I haven't really fully read it. We've been working. I've seen the essence of it, though, and it's really sick.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Minority Leader Chuck Schumer clashed on Wednesday over how Trump's likely impeachment trial would work. McConnell, top Republican in the Senate, flatly rejected Schumer's request to subpoena new witnesses. McConnell said Schumer was dead wrong on how the proceedings should go.
The Senate is meant to act as judge and jury, to hear a trial, not to rerun the entire fact-finding investigation because angry partisans rushed sloppily through it. It's not the Senate's job to leap into the breach and search desperately for ways to get the guilty. That would hardly be impartial justice.
Schumer said Republicans hadn't provided one solid reason, one simple reason, for refusing to have Trump administration witnesses testify.
Neither President Trump nor Mitch McConnell wants to hear from these witnesses because they're afraid of the truth. They don't want to know the truth because it will probably, we don't know, but probably put President Trump in an even deeper hole. I'm allowed to ask for votes. I will ask during the impeachment proceeding for a vote on whether Mulvaney should testify and whether Bolton should testify. And many of my Republican colleagues will be in a real dilemma.
It should be noted that the leading Democrats and Republicans in then President Bill Clinton's trial in 1999 negotiated a bipartisan process cordially. That's not happening here. Remember Rick Gates? He served as an aide on Trump's 2016 campaign. Well, he was sentenced on Tuesday to 45 days in jail to be served on consecutive weekends and 3 years probation. This after pleading guilty last year to lying to the FBI and special counsel Robert Mueller's team. Gates also pleaded guilty to one count of conspiracy against the United States. Gates got the lenient sentence after cooperating with the federal investigation into Russian election meddling. Well, crisis averted. The Democratic National Committee announced Tuesday that the party's next presidential debate will take place Thursday evening as scheduled, following the resolution of a labor dispute at Loyola Marymount University, where the event will be held. After Unite Here Local 11, the union representing the workers, informed Democratic candidates last week about the strike, all of the participants said they would not cross the picket line. The union said in a statement that it had reached a tentative agreement with Sodexo, including a 25% pay raise and a 50% drop in health care costs. Sounds good. Remember Bill Taylor? He's the top American diplomat in Ukraine who testified describing for Congress what he saw as Trump's efforts to pressure Kyiv to go after political rivals. He said on Tuesday that he is now stepping down. So Donald Trump gets to appoint a new ambassador to Ukraine. Gee, I can't wait to find out who that is. And finally, PolitiFact has announced its 2019 Lie of the Year. And, well, no surprise here, it came from the lying mouth of Donald J. Trump. Since the September 26th release of the whistleblower complaint about his call with Ukraine's President Zelensky, Trump has insisted more than 80 times that the whistleblower's account is fake, fraudulent, incorrect, total fiction, made up, and so wrong. On October 5th, Trump tweeted that the secondhand information whistleblower got my phone conversation almost completely wrong. Well, that's it. PolitiFact's lie of the year. In calling it out, they write, quote, despite what Trump claims, the whistleblower got the call almost completely right.
I got good news.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener funded, and that means I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 30 degrees Fahrenheit. We're expecting about a quarter inch of snow showers this morning, warming up a bit later in the afternoon, a high of about 45, and overnight lows in the mid to low 30s. Tomorrow we should have a high of around 50. We will have a lot of rain after the snow falls and it warms up. Winds are currently out of, currently out of the southwest. Light and variable 1 mile or so. We'll be picking up out of the southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour when it will bring the rain, and then shifting tonight out of the east-southeast, continuing at that clip of 5 to 10 miles per hour and getting, a quarter inch of rain overnight, and then another quarter inch of rain tomorrow. So snow will taper off, giving way to much more rain later on this afternoon, and our wintry mix should be ending around 1 p.m. Air quality index is good at 29 parts per million. The daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.96 inches. Visibility is down to 1/2 mile. And relative humidity is at 78%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 48 and partly cloudy. Paris is 52 and sunny. Rome is 60 degrees and partly cloudy with a flood watch. Kyiv is 53 and fair. Kabul is 40 degrees with still a lot of smoke. That's that inversion layer again. Hong Kong is 66 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 51 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and clear, but they have a lot of fires in the area. Wow. And San Francisco, California is 50 degrees with a light rain. And New York is 35 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Greece has toughened laws against bribery offenses, but more work is needed to be done to restore the ability of its criminal justice system to counter corruption. Europe's main rights watchdog said. In June, Greece downgraded bribery of public officials from a felony to a misdemeanor, softening sanctions for such crimes. The move prompted strong disapproval from the Council of Europe's Group of States Against Corruption, otherwise known as GRECO, and the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, known as the OECD. The criticism led to Greece's reintroduction of stronger criminal legislation on bribery offenses in November. The Council of Europe is the continent's main human rights watchdog, and GRECO said on Tuesday yesterday that it was still concerned about June's downgrading, that the downgrading would have long-standing retroactive consequences as corruption crimes by public officials committed before November would still be considered misdemeanors. In the statement, GRECO said a new feature of the criminal legislation allowing prosecutors to abstain from prosecuting misdemeanors punishable with up to a 3-year imprisonment might weaken the fight against corruption and money laundering. Do you think? GRECO urged Greece to comply with international standards against money laundering and combating financing of terrorism in relation to a recent initiative to amend the money laundering legislation.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Andrew Both of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Veteran climbers of Mount Everest are skeptical that proposed new regulations by the Nepalese government to tighten the permit process for adventurers will address the root causes of this year's heavy death toll on the world's tallest peak. American mountaineers Ed Vistures and Alan Arnett said planned new laws, if they are introduced at all, are unlikely to tackle the growing trend of inexperienced climbers rushing in packs to scale the 29,035-foot Himalayan peak. 11 climbers died on Everest this year, 9 on the Nepalese side and 2 on the Tibetan side. Many perished when a rush to climb the mountain during a short window of suitable weather in late May led to a traffic jam near the summit. Most teams opt to go for the summit when the first window is predicted, and everyone is afraid of missing what might be the one and only perfect day. There are typically several good summit days, but there's pressure to go when everyone else goes, and that was Vistures who said that. Nepal has traditionally issued climbing permits to anyone prepared to pay the $11,000 fee, handing out a record 381 passes this year. With essential Sherpas and guides added, more than 800 people were trying to reach the summit during the short weather window. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period, but you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.